picture this. You're standing right on the precipice of a massive life transition. You're about to graduate college.
Right. The corporate grind is just staring you right in the face.
Exactly. You're fully expected to put on a suit, commute to an office, and, basically become a responsible working adult.
Which is terrifying for most people.
It really is. But instead of doing any of that, you decide to embark on a 16-month cross-continental overland journey all the way to Israel.
It sounds like the opening montage of a highly romanticized indie film. The map graphics popping up, the acoustic guitar soundtrack.
Oh, yeah, and the profound voiceover about, finding oneself in the wilderness.
Exactly. That is the exact image we all have. We assume a trip like that requires years of meticulous planning and this deep, burning philosophical desire to see the world.
But how does a journey of that magnitude actually launch in the real world? Because today, we are unpacking the incredibly messy, unromantic, and frankly hilarious reality of how grand adventures actually begin.
Yeah, we are diving into source material from a Japanese YouTube series that meticulously recounts the actual diary and memories of an adventure traveler. Let's call him Marcy.
Right, and he started this exact epic journey back in December of 2000. And I love this deep dive because we aren't just tracing a route on a map today.
No, not at all. We are looking closely at the psychology of a traveler. We're exploring the hidden, bizarre mechanics of hitchhiking and those accidental catalysts that aggressively shove people out of their comfort zones.
And also the stark, often painful contrast between our grand cinematic ambitions and our clumsy everyday realities.
Which is so relatable.
It really is. So the origin story of this entire 16-month trek across Asia is, it's the perfect place to start because it completely shatters that indie film illusion we just talked about.
Oh, completely. Because Marcy didn't start this journey because of some profound yearning to understand the global human condition.
Nope. He started it because of peer pressure.
Relentless, inescapable peer pressure.
Right. So during his junior year of college, he had done some domestic hitchhiking around Japan.
And we have to set the scene here. At that specific time in Japanese pop culture, there was this massively popular television comedy duo called Seki.
Right, and they had famously hitchhiked across Eurasia for a reality TV broadcast.
They were everywhere. So naturally, anyone who was seen sticking their thumb out on a Japanese highway immediately drew comparisons to them.
So people would constantly walk up to him and say, oh, you're hitchhiking, you're just like Seki. So does that mean you're going to cross Asia too?
And at first, he vehemently denied it.
Yeah, he would shut it down immediately, telling people he was just trying to get to the next town, not the next continent.
But the repetition of that question over months and months, it began to act like a psychological chisel.
It totally makes me think of the movie Inception. If an idea gets planted in your mind by other people and they repeat it to you often enough,
it just takes root.
Exactly. Eventually, the boundaries blur, and it starts to feel like your own organic destiny. He starts thinking, wait, am I supposed to cross Asia? Is this my narrative?
And you combine that creeping inception with the looming anxiety of graduation, right?
Yeah, the pressure to become a so-called working adult.
Exactly. And so he suddenly plays his wild card. He takes a formal leave of absence from his university to actually do the thing everyone jokingly assumed he was going to do.
Which is just wild. But that inception process, I think it highlights a fundamental truth about human behavior. Life-changing decisions are rarely made in a sterile vacuum of pure, independent thought.
We are deeply susceptible to the narratives other people construct for us. We really are.
We are. But to fully grasp the absurdity of this, we have to look at how he started hitchhiking in the first place.
Yes, because the very activity that caused people to compare him to the TV stars was also a complete accident.
His initiation into hitchhiking was basically born out of pure spite and a temper tantrum.
It's such a great story. So it was his freshman winter. He was on a mogul skiing team, competing at a national tournament in Inuashiro, Fukushima.
And he was there with his older ski team buddy, right? His senpai.
Right, his senpai, which in Japanese culture denotes an older student or mentor figure who holds a significant amount of authority over you.
Right, so you kind of have to do what they say.
Exactly. So this senpai finishes his run, looks at the score the judges gave him, and decides he has been completely robbed. He is enraged.
He doesn't just get mad. He throws a monumental fit, decides he is quitting the sport altogether, and declares he is going to hitchhike all the way back to Hokkaido right that very second.
And because Marcy is the junior team member and was supposed to travel back with him, the senpai simply drags him out to the
So
highway.
yanks him right out of his normal life.
Literally. And they managed to catch 5 different cars all the way to Niigata in a single day.
Wow.
And the sources use this brilliant psychological framework to explain why this moment was so critical. They call it the Huckleberry Finn theory, or the rocket booster theory.
I really want to dig into the mechanics of that theory. Like, how does a single angry mentor redefine a person's life trajectory?
Well, think about normal, everyday life as having a tremendous amount of gravitational pull.
Like school societal expectations.
Exactly. The fear of embarrassment. These forces keep us locked in a very predictable orbit.
That makes a lot of sense.
So to escape that gravity and launch yourself into the unknown, you rarely have the internal fuel to do it alone. You need a powerful, almost unhinged rocket booster.
So you need like a chaotic friend.
Right. A delinquent mentor, a Huckleberry Finn to your Tom Sawyer who physically yanks you out of your comfort zone.
So that angry senpai was the literal rocket booster.
100%.
I mean, without that completely unfair mogul skiing score in Fukushima, Marcy never gets dragged to the side of a highway.
Right.
If he never gets dragged to the highway, he never discovers he can hitchhike. If he never hitchhikes, no one compares him to the Saragen reality stars.
The domino effect is incredible.
It really is.
Yeah.
And if no one compares him to those stars, he never takes a university leave of absence to travel to Israel. It is a spectacular chain reaction of accidents.
But getting blasted out of orbit by a chaotic mentor is only the initial spark, you know?
Right, because once you are actually standing on the side of the road, relying on strangers to move you forward, you have to survive a completely hidden economy.
Yes. The sources describe the mechanics of hitchhiking in a way that totally upends how we usually think about it.
They compare sticking your thumb out to casting a line while fishing. You're just standing there hoping something bites.
But getting a driver to pull over and let you into the car is merely step one of a much more complex transaction.
The moment you close that passenger door, you enter this highly enclosed one-on-one environment.
You've entered a transactional space that the sources brilliantly describe as a live jazz session.
A jazz session. I love that. Because we tend to romanticize the hitchhiker as a stoic explorer. You know, we picture them staring thoughtfully out the passenger window, watching the landscape roll by while contemplating the open road.
Like a Jack Kerouac novel.
Exactly. But the reality painted here is that he's essentially an in-car busker, singing for his supper.
He really is performing. And it requires an immense, draining amount of emotional intelligence. Think about the psychology of the driver.
Right, why are they picking you up in the first place?
Usually, they pull over out of pity, or perhaps out of sheer boredom on a long haul. So once you're in that seat, you have to instantly read the room.
You have to match the driver's rhythm and utilize your talk skills to provide value.
Right, you're literally paying for your transportation with entertainment.
And the way the rewards escalate based on your performance is wild. It sounds like a video game.
It really does. If you are a passable conversationalist and keep the silence from getting awkward, the driver might buy you a canned coffee or a juice at the next rest stop.
Okay, so a small reward.
But if you are genuinely funny and tell great stories, they might buy you snacks or even treat you to a full dinner.
And if you completely nail the jazz session.
Oh, if you manage to read their exact emotional needs, make them laugh, and turn a grueling drive into the highlight of their week, the rewards compound.
They might drive you 50 miles further than they originally intended.
The sources even detail a specific instance where a driver was so entertained that a 10,000 yen bill came flying Marcy's way as a send-off tip.
10,000 yen. That's amazing. It completely dismantles the idea of hitchhiking as a passive act of begging.
It's not charity, it's an active exchange.
Right. You aren't just sitting there asking for a handout. You are engaging in a highly empathetic social exchange. You have to figure out within 3 seconds if this driver needs a therapist to complain to about their spouse.
Or a comedian to keep them awake.
Or like an eager student to lecture about their worldview.
Exactly. So, armed with those deeply honed jazz skills, his university leave of absence, and the grand ambitions planted in his head by his peers, the launch date for the massive 16-month journey finally arrives.
December 18th, 2000.
Right. And you would think the morning of a cross-continental expedition would be filled with quiet reflection.
Oh, for sure. You imagine a dramatic sunrise, maybe a final poignant look at the hometown skyline.
But the contrast between the gravity of a 16-month departure and the messy, mundane reality of this specific morning is cinematic comedy.
It really is. So the preparation begins with his college friend, Koyama, giving him a ride to the port city of Hakodate.
They crash at Koyama's father's house, and to celebrate the monumental eve of the journey, they head to an izakaya, which is a traditional, casual Japanese pub.
And they proceed to drink heavily until 2 in the morning.
Naturally.
So on the dawn of his epic, knife-altering trek, he sleeps in until 10 a.m.
And the ferry that will take him across the strait to Honshu, the main island of Japan, leaves at 12:10 p.m.
The entire morning becomes a chaotic, nauseous sprint.
It's a disaster.
And amidst this mad rush, there's a detail in the sources that I find absolutely perfect. He is battling a brutal hangover, but he insists on stopping to order a burger from a famous local fast food joint called Lucky Pierrot.
Priorities, right?
Right. But the nausea and the time crunch are so severe that he receives his food, realizes he can't stomach it all, and has to abandon his favorite French fries on the table.
Leaving the fries behind becomes the tragic centerpiece of the morning.
It's so sad.
It perfectly underscores the total lack of glamour in this departure.
He is hungover, mourning his abandoned French fries, and literally sprinting to the docks to catch this ferry.
And he barely makes it on board before they pull up the ramp.
But as the ship begins to pull away from Hokkaido, the chaotic energy suddenly shifts. He runs out onto the freezing open deck and frantically scans the docks, searching for his friend Koyama so he can wave goodbye.
And the sources analyze this moment deeply, noting that it instantly generated a strangely dramatic, highly emotional atmosphere.
They describe it as having a boys' love or BL vibe, referencing a genre of manga and anime that heavily romanticizes deep, intense emotional bonds between male characters.
Because he is passionately waving from the railing of a departing ship to his college buddy standing alone on the receding shore.
It's so dramatic. For Marcy in that specific second, Koyama ceased to be just a buddy he got drunk with the night before.
Koyama became the physical embodiment of Hokkaido.
Wow. Yeah, waving to him was the tangible act of saying goodbye to his entire known world for the next year and a half.
And that behavior exposes a deep psychological necessity we all share. We require rituals to anchor our life transitions.
That's a really good point. If he had just slumped into a seat inside the ferry cabin and fallen asleep, the gravity of leaving for 16 months wouldn't have registered in his brain.
It would have just felt like a terrible hangover on a boat.
Right. We actively manufacture these cinematic moments of connection, like a dramatic wave from a ship's deck, to convince our own minds that a significant shift is actually occurring.
So the imaginary dramatic music is swelling, the wind is whipping his hair, the ferry crosses the sea,
And then it docks in Honshu.
and the second he steps off the boat, that cinematic score screeches to a painful halt.
Oh, man. He is immediately smacked in the face by the consequences of his own terrible logistical planning.
Because he steps off the boat in Aomori, the northernmost prefecture of the main island, and tries to keep the momentum going, he is entirely alone in the port yelling "yeah" and "woo" to hype himself up.
But the hype evaporates instantly, because it is mid-December in northern Japan. The brutal reality of winter sets in.
He hikes out to a main road, finds what he assumes is a strategic spot to catch a ride, sticks his thumb out, and waits.
And waits. He stands in the biting, freezing wind for 40 continuous minutes.
Which brings about the most vital, immediate lesson of his entire expedition. You cannot hitchhike in winter. The mechanics of the system completely break down.
Well, let's talk about that. The jet session economy relies on communication, but how does the weather destroy that?
It basically comes down to basic physical comfort. Drivers in the dead of winter have their heaters blasting. They do not want to roll down their windows to speak to a shivering stranger on the shoulder.
Oh, of course not.
They certainly do not want to unlock their doors and let a blast of sub-zero air into their carefully climate-controlled environment.
Right, so the initial transaction, the moment of eye contact and negotiation, becomes physically impossible when the car is essentially a sealed, moving fortress of warmth.
Exactly.
A man finally does take pity on him and pulls over. And the irony is entirely lost on Marcy that the driver happens to be a man training to become a Buddhist monk.
I mean, it practically requires a vow of supreme charity to pick up a freezing, screaming guy off the side of a December road.
It really does. And this massive logistical failure forces an immediate, drastic pivot in his strategy. The sources refer to this as the hidden mission of the trip.
Right, because he realizes that if he is going to be stuck in Japan longer than anticipated due to the weather, he has to fiercely protect his limited funds for the actual Asia leg of the journey.
He absolutely cannot afford hotels.
So his romantic survival strategy devolves into the shameless, aggressive exploitation of his own social network.
And the way he executes this hidden mission is so far removed from the heroic explorer narrative. His epic journey involves traveling to the city of Hirosaki solely to crash at the apartment of his younger cousin, Yuya.
Now, Yuya is a university student who works a grueling part-time job delivering newspapers, which requires him to wake up at 4 in the morning.
Oh no.
Yeah. So does our intrepid world traveler respect his cousin's schedule.
Not even a little bit. He keeps poor Yuya up drinking and talking until midnight.
And the imposition escalates when it is time for Marcy to leave Hirosaki and head toward Niigata. He decides he needs to demonstrate his veteran hitchhiking skills to his younger cousin.
He drags Yuya out of his apartment and forces him to stand in the freezing winter wind just to watch him seamlessly hail a car.
But as we already established, the winter hitchhiking economy is broken.
All right, so it takes an entire hour to get a ride.
He essentially tortures his sleep-deprived cousin, making him freeze on the side of a highway for 60 minutes just to watch him fail at his own supposed expertise.
It strips away any remaining illusion of the lone, dignified explorer.
It really does.
Eventually, he does make it to Niigata, where he utilizes the network of his old ski buddies to find another free floor to sleep on.
And he even attends a gukon, a traditional Japanese blind date mixer, hoping for a fun night and maybe some free drinks.
But the event turns out to be agonizingly boring.
Because why does a guy who relies on his high-stakes jazz session communication skills fail to liven up a local mixer?
Yeah, that's a great question.
It's because the contexts are entirely mismatched.
Oh, interesting.
In a car, the driver holds all the power and the hitchhiker performs with high energy to earn their keep. But a rural gukon is a low-stakes environment filled with locals who are incredibly shy and hesitant to open up to a loud, transient stranger.
Yeah, I see. His aggressive hitchhiking energy clashes completely with the quiet, reserved dynamics of the party.
Precisely. So he is forced to sit through hours of awkward silence just to ensure he doesn't alienate the people providing his free lodging.
I deeply appreciate how these sources challenge the heroic narrative of long-term travel. I mean, he is not scaling ice walls with a pickaxe.
No, he is freezing in suburban parking lots, tormenting his paperboy cousin, and awkwardly nursing a drink at a painfully quiet local party just to avoid paying for a hostel.
Yet this validates the profound, unvarnished truth of backpacking. We imagine an endless series of mountaintop epiphanies. The reality is aggressively managing a spreadsheet of a tiny budget.
It requires enduring severe physical discomfort, repeatedly swallowing your pride, and relying heavily on the charity of people you barely know.
Or relatives you are actively inconveniencing.
Exactly.
So if you are listening to this and mapping it onto your own ambitions, the takeaway is beautifully chaotic. Epic journeys do not begin with a flawless cinematic itinerary and a perfectly packed bag.
They begin with a mentor throwing a tantrum over a ski score. They begin with the inescapable pressure of people constantly comparing you to reality television stars.
They launch with terrible hangovers, tragically abandoned fast food, and the sheer foolish audacity to stand in the freezing wind until a Buddhist monk takes pity on you.
So if you are waiting for the perfect romantic moment to start a massive project, to pivot your career, or to move across the world,
You are falling into a trap. The launch will always be messy.
you will inevitably find yourself freezing on a metaphorical highway, relying on improvised jazz sessions to navigate the deeply uncomfortable realities you didn't plan for.
And occasionally, you simply have to wait for a delinquent mentor to act as your rocket booster, knocking you violently out of your safe, predictable orbit.
Which leaves you with one final, deeply provocative thought to chew on.
Yeah, Marcy only embarked on this massive, life-altering 16-month journey across a continent because his peers jokingly assumed he would. The seed of his destiny was planted by passing careless comments from other people.
So, taking a hard look at your own life right now, how many of the defining choices you have made, your career path, your hobbies, the city you live in, were actually just you acting out a script that a friend accidentally wrote for you?
Are you truly living out your own grand ambition, or did you just say yes because someone kept asking if you were going to do it?
That is an incredibly powerful question to sit with.
It definitely forces you to evaluate who is holding the pen to your story. Well, thank you so much for joining us for this deep dive into the messy, hilarious reality of starting an adventure. We appreciate you being here, and we'll catch you next time.